Stop because my computer about died. I didn't have my charger. So I will have a little bit ahead of where my last video stopped, but let's recap. So we have number 1 is our first rectangle. This is our header tag rectangle. Then we have number 2, which is potentially part of the header, could be another section. We'll just treat it as part of the header, but we're going to call it number 2. So this is also a header. Okay, then we have a really, really big section box here that runs from the top all the way down here to the bottom. That's number 3 box. And then we have our number 4 box, which is the footer. Okay, I went ahead and I started another frame right next to that, so you could see that really without any kind of content, we only have 4 boxes on the page. Okay, that's it. Now, what the directions in the assignment are really asking you to do when they ask you to create tags is to create space on the page, or to create some kind of place where content will eventually go on the page. It is not in there yet, but we have created tags in a visual way. We haven't actually gone and encoded it, which we'll do that in a second. Okay. All right. We created a header right here in the directions, header tag right there. We also created a section tag, and we created a footer tag. Okay, but they don't mention another 2 important tags that we're going to have to use, which I think is the fault of the activity, but you guys know my feelings on some of these activities. Okay, so this is number 1 box. All I'm doing right now is renumbering, so that as we go, actually we'll put them on the outside the same way. That way you guys see that it's exactly the same thing, somewhat. That way we can follow along, and I will zoom back out so you guys see what I'm doing here. This is number 3, and then we are going to make this number 4. Okay. Alright, same exact setup. Alright, now we're going to put in our tags. In order to create a box in the HTML framework, you have to have a tag. Okay. So, this one is, we said, was a header tag. Okay, you have to have a start tag. That is the beginning of the box, and in order to tell the machine that the box needs to end, we have to have an end tag. Otherwise, it doesn't know to end. It'll just keep computing and doing all kinds of crazy things, and your website won't look like you want it to look. Okay, so we have a header tag. We weren't 100% sure if this was part of the header or not, so let's go ahead and make it a div tag. That is part of your requirements anyway, so we'll just treat it as a div. We're going to have a start div, and we're going to have an end div. Okay. So we have 2 boxes now. Okay, and then we have some kind of section div that will have, I know this is a section. That's the beginning tag for my section. And then we have to put the end tag all the way down here. This is how I visualize it. You don't have to do it this way, but for me, it helped to understand the tags by seeing that it was like the beginning of the box, and then we're going to do the end of the box all the way down here. Oh, we need the end of the box. So I always see them like this. And I have a character too that kind of, this is how I don't think I've given him a name yet, but whenever I talk about padding or margin or whatever, this is how I see. It's a box. It's content. It's a place that you're going to eventually put content on the page, but nothing is there quite yet. That's all we're really doing, is creating boxes for content. Okay, then we have a footer box that we need to create. oops, that would be a beginning tag. We don't want that slash in there because that indicates if I put that beginning tag there, then the machine thinks that it's ending a box, and it already just ended a box, so it gets really confused, and that will throw errors, and that's when your code gets read, or one of the reasons that it get read. There's a lot of reasons, but okay. So we have box number 1, box number 2, box number 3, and box number 4. Okay, a few things. This is pretend the user is looking at your website through the viewport. If this is set up in the code, the user cannot see anything right now. All of this HTML that we just wrote, it was instructions for the machine. It has nothing to do with the user and what they're actually seeing on the page. Okay, and how did I know which tags went where? I use W3 Schools. I use this quite a bit. I went to HTML up here, and I went to HTML tag list. This is a super helpful resource. If you search for the tags that they're telling you to use in the assignment, it will give you a little bit of an explanation of what these tags do. The tags are predisposed, or they're giving like pre-packaged directions. Those are coded by completely different people. They have nothing to do with us. They come with different directions on things that they may or may not look like, depending on if you choose to use that particular tag. The header tag is a good way to kind of look at, because that will always, depending on if you pick an H1 through an H6, it might look more bold, it might look bigger. So if you want it to have a different style or have it behave in a certain way, then you're going to want to pick different types of tags. Like if you want a list with bullets, then you might want to choose a list. This was something I didn't fully understand at first. Tags are all boxes. They're all going to create a box on the page, but they're going to do different things, different prepackaged jobs, if you will, for these different tags, so that when they come out of Mr. Architect's briefcase, then they're able to do different things. They even have a table that you could use. It's kind of fun to see what all the different things will do. So this particular element is prepackaged with the ability to create a table so that the user can see some kind of data. Okay, so definitely use that resource if you're confused on like how I knew that was a header, a div, or a section. I just knew based on the jobs of what these things were doing on the actual website that that's probably what the tag was that they used. You wouldn't know for sure unless you went into the source code. I didn't start there because I think source code can be super overwhelming at first when you're learning, so I kept it kind of basic. Okay, now the entire point of a website is to get data or information in an organized, cool way to someone else to actually visualize, okay? You have to use the whole viewport, kind of. This part was a little bit conceptually confusing to me. First, you have to tell the browser, pretend you're going on Google or Firefox or Internet Explorer, that, hey, look, I've got a website coming through. Okay, you have to be able to tell the browser if you're going to be giving it HTML language information. So that is where this HTML tag comes into play. This is still a tag, even though I don't know why our assignment directions don't really address that very well. At least I don't think they did. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and add an HTML body or tag in, because your website will not read if you go ahead and just code that. If we just coded what I just put on there, that browser is going to have absolutely no idea what it's reading. So you have to also give it that instruction, and in a weird way, that's creating another box. Technically, this should be like box number 1, and I'll show you once we get into code Y. Okay. All right, so we are going to call it number 0. No, we're going to call it a letter. Okay, we're going to call this A, number A. Just bear with me. I probably should have started with these, but I realized they were pretty important to add in. Okay, this is what we are going to call an HTML tag. It still creates a box. No one is ever going to see that box because it's just there to create a frame, if you will, for the machine that you are talking to. It's saying, hey, look, we're about to give you some HTML markup language. I need you to be ready to accept that language. That way it understands kind of the conversation that it's about to have with this website. Otherwise, it won't know what to actually put on the website. And it does, I say talking and conversation a lot because to me, that's what helps me understand what's happening. It's like having an actual conversation between two things and how you have to be really explicit in explaining those two things. Okay, so we covered this particular tag just now, HTML, beginning tag. We also need to cover a body tag. I am still too new to this to fully understand the standard practice here. But it seems like most sites have to have some kind of body tag. Because there's something called a head tag, which is, we've used the head tag. We haven't talked about it too much. We will talk about it more once we get into the CSS section of this. But the head tag is usually outside of the body. We're not even going to go there yet today. But okay. So this is my body tag that I am now creating. I don't want to get too much on my numbers, but I want you guys to be able to see this. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can still see my numbers. Okay, we're good. We can see that. Okay, and did you notice that I'm putting them outside of the orange? Okay, they're nested. The orange boxes are nested within those boxes. And when they talk about nesting, it's a super fancy term, but that's really what we're doing. We're putting boxes inside of boxes, boxes inside of other boxes, and more boxes inside of those boxes. Okay, we're basically creating an outline, like, you know, in those essays that we used to do in high school, an outline or organizational format for that website to be read is all that we're really doing. So this box that I just added is going to be B, and that's going to be our body. Okay. Now, just because I'm putting it like this now doesn't mean you can't change it later or add things. Okay, so that's the start of my box. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to end my box all the way at the end here. Okay, so that is my body. So notice they're all tags. They're all HTML element tags. They're all creating boxes. They're just named different things because they might have to do something different with the content inside of them that eventually is there. There's no content in there yet, but there will be. So that's why it's important to choose different tags, because it's going to control some of the styling or possibly the behavior of the content within that box once we eventually put it in there. So that's why they usually want you to start with a framework and kind of make a plan for where you're heading for that site. Okay, I put those particular tags in Mr. Viewport. I don't know if this is technically correct or not, but I kind of think of them as more organizational purposes for having a conversation with a browser and how it's going to actually organize the information. So I feel like these tags best connect with Mr. Viewport rather than Betty Block or Ingrid Inline. Okay, notice we have covered pretty much, this one's covered, this one's covered, this one's covered, and this one's covered. We have not covered H1 yet. We'll go ahead and circle these so we remember that we have not covered these yet, because they are part of the requirements. But I'm going to explain to you a little bit about why they probably are not in there yet. Okay, we don't have an image tag yet, we don't have a button tag, and we don't have an H1 tag yet. We don't have those yet because those are mostly, I can't say this all the time, they're going to be used for content. They're going to probably go inside of our bigger boxes that we have created. So let's see if I'm right here as we go through this website, because we kind of paused on our website, but let's try it again. All right, so we're kind of going to look to see if my theory is correct. Let's look for some images, let's look for some buttons, let's look for some headers and see. Okay, so let's start with red, because I'm assuming you're probably going to catch some of this over here. All right, so at the top of the page, we are going to, you know what, let me pause. I'm going to get back to that red one. Just so you know, this is what the assignment is asking you to do. When it says to red outline or red line, or I forget the exact verbiage, this would be a sufficient answer to that assignment. Okay. I don't even think you have to get as technical as we're about to get, but I would like you to see it so that if you want to add it on your assignment, then you can. But this is what they're talking about. Outline the boxes, kind of visualize where you're going to head with the website. So that's part 1 of what you need to do for this assignment. Okay. All right. So I see that we have, it looks like, all right. We definitely have an image here. And then it looks like we have some other images here. Got one here. We've got one here. Let's go through. Got one here. I'm not going to do all of this. You guys might lose your minds watching me do this all day, but I want to give you an idea of what you're seeing here. I'm going to get a little more simple for our assignment. What I'm really doing here is outlining images, but I'm also showing you tags. Okay, we have an image tag. I'm going to grab this so I can tag them over here. Okay, so really what this is an image tag. That's a start image tag. And then we have another image tag. Let's make him so he matches. Okay. And then we also have one here. And we 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 have one here. Hopefully you're getting the idea here. And then we also have them here. I could go on forever, but I think you're getting the idea, hopefully. So really we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, about 24-ish image tags on this entire thing. Plus, we have a logo, so that could potentially be an image tag. That depends on how they set it up. Again, without going into the actual code, I can't be definitive on any of this. They might have set up their code in a completely different way. Why is this not? There we go. So I'm going to assume this was probably some kind of image that they pulled from an alternate source, maybe had someone create or create themselves. So we're going to mark that as an image tag as well. Okay. All right, now we also need to look for some buttons because it looks like buttons were important. Okay, we have some buttons down here. And we've got some buttons here. A button is just something that the user can click on and expect some kind of reaction or response. Something needs to happen. It's an interaction or an event listener. Okay, we also have a button here. We also, let's see, I think that might be, okay, we also have these things called links that could act a little bit like a button. Now, just because you push on it doesn't mean it's technically going to be coded like a button in HTML, okay? Because this is probably not going to be coded like a button. Yeah, sure, you can click on it and it's going to take you to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. But my guess is it's probably coded as an A tag, which would be a link tag. And if you look here, A tag, A would take you, if you have this tag, it would take you to W3 schools. So it didn't require you to do any sort of A tags in this assignment. So I won't go down into that too in depth, but just know that there are some things that could kind of seem like there may be buttons on a website, but they may not be, depending on. These are probably A tags, because these are all links that are going to take you somewhere else. Same like this one up here. Log in an account. Those are probably going to be A tags. It'd be kind of cool to go into the code and see if my guesses are correct. But okay, so let's just go back to coding our button, because the assignment doesn't have you deal with all the types of tags. So it would not be possible to code this entire website using just what our particular assignment is having us do. It kind of limits the types of tags that it wants you to work with at first, because those are going to be some more basic tags, if you will. Okay, so this is one button tag. This is another button tag. Oops, I have my end tag, start tag, end tag. Okay, so really you could get pretty messy code, because you could end up with a lot of different buttons and a lot of different things, which is partly why those libraries or frameworks that we've been talking about in class, like jQuery and Bootstrap, they become really super helpful, because I can imagine that it would be really confusing once this code gets even fancier than what we're dealing with, because we're dealing with really basic code. Okay, so really we have about 5 buttons. I'm not going to go through and do that. I think you get the idea here. Okay, so we could go and redline or outline the entire site if we had the time. I don't see any sense in doing that too much, because we're not dealing with all of the tags that would be required to use that particular or to code this site. So okay, I showed you image, so we can say that's covered. We covered button. Okay, and now we are going to cover, I'm going to talk a little bit about the div too. Okay, but let's talk about H1. H1s are headers. They are going to do different things with styling. They're going to be small, big, depending on what content you put inside of them. Okay. So let's look for an H1. I would say they probably don't have an actual H1, but they have some kind of H. I would say they're probably using an H, looks like an H3 maybe, because an H1 I would imagine would be a little bit bigger on this website, so we're going to call it an H3. Alright, so let's just go through, and what color do I need for H3s? We're going to make that orange because it is a Betty block. And then maybe this one is an H3. And maybe this one is an H3. Okay, and we could keep going if we wanted to, but let's go ahead and code those out, just because I'm trying to get you to see that the tags really are just a fancy way to draw a box. It's the machine's way of speaking box language. Okay, because it can't speak the language that we have, so you have to speak a different language to get it to make a box, and that's how he knows to make a box, is using these tags. So we have another H3 down here. We need to close him, otherwise the machine gets confused. It doesn't know what to do. Alright, we're going to do one last thing in this video. We're going to talk about content versus white space, and seeing that things actually do exist even when they don't look like they exist. So I'm going to take some of this content over. I'm not going to take all of it, because we would be here all day. I don't want to do that to you guys. Oops. Let's just do the first section. Hopefully it'll give you enough of an idea. Okay. And we're gonna let's just make text boxes in maybe a different color. We didn't really cover that in the assignment, so I don't want to confuse you guys too much. Even though you probably are going to need them in the assignment to make a full website, so you might want to take note. So let's do this color here. So this is text. It could be a P tag. I'd have to look. It could be different tags, though. It doesn't have to be a P tag necessarily. We got some text here. Then we have some text here. And we have some text here. Oh my goodness, it's almost like it's like making a box. Huh. That's interesting. Okay. All I'm doing here is copying the same shape. Same exact layout. This is what you would do first before. Okay, I put them all over here, but they're not looking super neat, so I'm going to do that because I want you to see that in the beginning, without any sort of styling, the tags will have a certain built-in amount of spacing, but they're not going to have a ton of spacing. They do have some kind of default spacing. It depends on the certain type of tag that you use, but let's pretend that this fits perfect, and we're going to put this maybe about here. Okay. I'm going to put this here. Put this here. Okay. So really, all we did was take this section. Oops, let's do a different color so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm going to make him a little bit bigger. And so we just took this whole section. It's still within the section tag that we created, and we put it into box form. Okay. My dog's in my family. My dog just got in with the door locked.